Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Seller Sessions. I'm Izabela Hamilton, and here with me today, I have one of my favorite people in the world, Cortney. Welcome again for the third time.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
When I started discussing with Danny about the podcast, I said, I have a very, very special young lady that I would like to bring more than once. And he's like, of course, let's go for it. So it worked out because everybody is so happy to see you. And, the other episodes that we did were just so good. So I'm definitely looking forward to talking with you today about our favorite subject. So I'll let you start with that. What's our favorite subject?
Thank you. Well, definitely one of our favorite subjects is money. So we're just gonna put that out there right now. No shame in that game. And yeah, so today we really wanted to talk about money and how to start bringing more of it into your life, especially if in this new year you're focusing on that. You're wanting to figure out how to create more abundance. The two of us really wanted to get together and talk to you about how to do that.
That's great. It's the perfect beginning of a new year. If we set our goals and expectations high enough, we may reach them. Most people want to set them, comfortable and low, and with the thinking that, if I just put like a small goal, then I'll be able to achieve it, right? So I think, in my opinion, the higher the goal, the better chances you are of reaching that goal. So I'm definitely excited. Tiffany, good morning.
Good morning.
The money too. I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So yeah, I think money is definitely a subject that is not really talked about, or at least hasn't been talked about in the past, and especially amongst women, because it's almost like taboo, especially to where I'm coming from. When we grew up, the subject of money was like hush hush, like you don't really hear anybody talking about it. Even your parents might even like go into another room to talk about it. So it was always a subject that was almost forbidden to talk about. And, when you grow up with something like that, then, in the future, it's almost impossible for you to act on something like this, because your subconscious always tells you like, hey, this is something you're not allowed to talk about. So I would like to hear your opinion and maybe give us a little background of how it was for you. Maybe when you grew up, did you have this kind of stigma around money?
I think we all grew up, not all of us maybe, some fortunate people maybe don't, but I think all of us grew up with really heavily entrenched stories around money. So whatever those are for you, it's kind of important to understand a little bit about what those are, and then to be able to kind of, I think they're money wounds in a way. Like I think we all have money wounds or money wounding. And it's really important as part of like bringing more of it into your life to understand what that is. And one of the other reasons that I really love the fact that we're leading with this topic of money this year is because money really, it comes from the term, like the original term is corrente, right? Currency. And it's the flow, right? It's the flow of that abundance to you. And I think we all can sort of get hung up in the idea that we don't deserve it, or there's not enough of it to go around, or whatever that story is, whatever that not enoughness story is that kind of keeps us trapped in that place. So for sure, I've had that story active in my life in the past. And it's funny because it also comes from, I think anytime we're looking at attracting more money, the biggest key to unlocking that is confidence. So you and I have talked a lot in the previous episode about confidence. And so just to link back to that, I mean, if you look at money, if you look at even markets, right? Money markets, they fluctuate based on the confidence in those markets. And the word confidence, as we've talked about in the past too, comes from trusting, confidere, to trust, or with trust in, right? Something. So the more you actually learn to trust in yourself and your innate right to abundance, to wealth, then the more that starts to flow to you, because other people, institutions, et cetera, start to perceive that confidence. And that's where money does go. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Where do you think this stigma even started? Like, was it like centuries ago and people maybe didn't have enough, or what do you think brought upon this this subject to be like so closed off?
Well, that's a good question to which I definitely don't have the answer. But what I will say about that is lots of times people want to understand where it came from, where the wound came from, whatever that is, right? So whatever thing you're frustrated with in your life, whatever the pattern is that you don't really like, lots of times because of the way that also self-help is traditionally set up, we're looking for a way to fix it by sort of uncovering what that is and going deep into the pain of whatever that is. And what I often tell people is you actually don't have to understand where it comes from to start to redirect your energy and your focus where you want it to be. And so especially with attracting money, that is, well, actually really attracting anything, but that's really important in terms of how you start to bring more of it in, is less about trying to understand and dig deep and go in, get all psychoanalytical on yourself. But, you don't necessarily have to psychoanalyze as much as you need to just start to redirect. And so I think we can definitely talk a little bit more about that and how we both have done it in our own lives, if you want to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was really trying to understand where this come from, because it's not a one generation thing, like my parents grew up with it, which brought it into my life. And, I'm glad I was able to stop it, because I don't want my child to ever feel like there's a lack of anything. And, of course, there's a fine line when it comes to that, because you're like, okay, when is the point of, like, when am I spoiling my kids or, my family or friends or whatever? But then it's like, I want to make sure that he never feels like he has anything. And, at the same time, I hope he will be as excited as I am about like working hard and building something for myself. So I guess that's a work in progress, and I'll see in like 20 years how I did.
Yeah.
When it comes to my family, I'm sure, my parents' they went through the same thing. I mean, we grew up in communism, and even before I was born, it was even harder. I remember stories about like, not even remember stories. I actually lived in those times where, I was going to the village to see my grandma and grandpa, and we were just there with them. And I remember like my grandma washing the clothes outside in the winter in like 10 degrees Celsius or even less. It's very cold. And you are bringing the water from the fountain and you're carrying it in the house. Like all these things that seem so normal. So for them, I don't even think they really ever dealt with money, because like my grandpa worked for the cooperative in town, and instead of being paid money, they were paid in food, like flour and oil and things like that. So I don't even remember the exchange of currency at that time. Definitely a lack. It was always like, okay, if you can't come to work, you're not going to be able to feed your family. And even though they were taking the food from the land that my grandparents worked. So you would have your land, you would work on it, and then you would have to give it to, the state or government, and then they'll give you something back, a little bit. So, I'm definitely very, very thankful to not live in those times anymore. And even moving from that to the city where I lived with my parents, where they started to work, doing different things, like even that seemed like such a huge step up. Like we're not in the village, we don't have to work the land, or in city, we're cool, and then, to get to the point where it's like now I'm here in US and I have my own business. Like I have seen like 2 generations, huge gap, extreme. It's like watching a movie, you go and it's like you fast forward 10 years and 10 years, and definitely very grateful. And I feel like that is why, I am able to maybe translate that into my life when it comes to money, because I have seen the big changes throughout my life, and even being here, seeing the possibilities of creating wealth.
Yeah.
I'm definitely living in good times.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I just going back to your question and also what you just explained about your family. I know, growing up in my family, we were a family of 5 kids born in less than 7 years, like about 6.5 years, 5 kids, and I'm second to last in that lineup. And I definitely, like, the story that I had been telling myself, which I didn't understand until much, much, much later in my life, was that there's not enough for me. There's just not enough for me. And I think that was coming at the end of, toward the end of that entourage of kids. But the funny thing about it is that kind of bled into all sorts of different areas of my life. So you can see that your money story does start to kind of, go cross borders into other places. But I think the other really important thing about that, though, is when you're talking about your story and your upbringing, is like the values that you did have and the things that did come of it. Because I know even since I've been here in Italy, it's funny, I just got this year a dryer, a clothes dryer. Like, I didn't have one before this year. So I've been living here for almost 20 years. And before this, I used to hang my clothes out even in the winter, and our sheets, and we would literally bring them in frozen the next day. And it was such a luxury. I remember the luxury of getting a dryer. And I got my first my dishwasher this year too. So it's funny because even though I had created a lot of abundance in my life, there were these places where I was like, oh, but I don't need that thing. But it really wasn't about not needing it. Or, I mean, I can say it definitely has increased the comfort of my life. It was just sort of, I was in this society and this culture that is more conservative in that way. And I think I learned a lot from that, and I grew a lot from that. And it's actually a beautiful part of who I am now. But it's also beautiful to be able to say, oh gosh, to really appreciate the luxury of that. I mean, if you're in a home, or you're in a situation where you've always had the clothing dryer or the dishwasher, you probably never even thought about those simple luxuries, but they're huge, huge luxuries. And I think this piece of being able to appreciate that as well is one of the things that you and I really wanted to talk about, is like appreciation, gratitude for what you do have. And again, sometimes you're so used to it, you don't even think about it. But if you can just for a second say, wow, I have this, or I'm able to listen to this right now. I'm able, and by the way, even the fact that you're here says so much about you. I mean, if you're listening to this, it says that you're really committed to creating something different for yourself right now. You're invested in your growth. You're invested in your learning and your evolution. So wow, I mean, right there, that is a huge thing to be so grateful for. And the more you kind of sit in the energy of that appreciation, or as you were talking about your story of the appreciation of all these beautiful things, that all the values that were there, even if there wasn't this thing that we call money necessarily, but there was an exchange. And I think that's also the important thing for people to understand, is the exchange there, is the flow there, right? Because money's like blood, right? If it's not flowing, you've got a huge problem. So it's important to kind of be paying attention to that and start getting out of your own way, in the sense of whatever your money story is, or whatever your story is that's your pattern in different areas, to start to recognize it and start to redirect.
I love that you mentioned that. For those who are listening, that even, seeing a title such as money, makes somebody think twice, like, what is even there to talk about money? And I don't want to think that there's still people out there who would think that, but, and I meet a lot of people who are very scared to talk about money. And I'm always open and, able to talk about money. And when I came to US, I did have this like stigma around money, like you cannot talk about it. You cannot, even mention it. If you do, it's bad. What are people going to say about you? I mean, there's all these things that we have in our head, and we don't even know where we pick them up. They just come with us. And when I decided that it was okay for me to talk about it, and the more I talked about it, the more comfortable I felt. So I wanted to get to a point where I was not scared to talk about money. I wasn't even at the point of starting making money yet, because this is a process. You can't just to be a runner, you can't just start today and run 10 miles. Like, it will take you a while to get to that point. So, I guess I realized early enough that for me to even be able to make money, I need to make room for money in my head before I even try to get some. So, and it's definitely very hard to do that. And with everything that you're uncomfortable with, that first time is just so hard. It feels awkward. It feels weird. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like it's not part of you because it hasn't. And if you're able to to just practice it again, just like anything else, like us, make sure you associate it with something that you're already doing. Like if you wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, maybe say some affirmations that have to do with money. Maybe something like, money comes easy to me, money is abundant, anything to do with money. And it's going to feel very weird in the beginning. It's going to feel, again, super uncomfortable, and you're going to feel like a fraud maybe. I'm just speaking from experience. But then the more you say it, you realize that just like with any habit, it becomes easier. And next thing you know, it just becomes part of you. And next thing you know, you can talk about money. And I was telling you the other day a funny story, which I think should be mentioned now. It's probably an appropriate time. I was invited to speak at just the Amazon seller meetup about a year and a half ago. And everybody was just like talking about the different things, different businesses. And when it was my turn to speak, I stood up and I said, my name is Izabela and I love money. And I
love it.
For you to be in the room and see the eyes that glazed upon me when I said that, it was definitely very disruptive.
Mm-hmm.
One, who says they love money? Because it's, oh my God, it's like almost saying like you love crime or something. And then I'm a woman saying this. So it was very disruptive, but I wanted it to be disruptive. I wanted to be shocking. I wanted people to question, what the hell is she talking about? Why is she bringing this up? I wanted to create a conversation around that. And I'm telling you, I saw everybody just turn and look at me like, who said this? Like, who, you don't even realize, like, even the word that comes out of your mouth, like how it can trigger people.
Absolutely.
And once I got to that part, I said, we are all selling on Amazon, and what we want is, we all want money. Like, there's no way to hide behind this. Now that we figured out that we all love money, what do we do to make it? What's the next step? But first, you have to admit, because a lot of people say, oh, I want to do this because, like, I love people and I love this, and it's great. Trust me, I love people more than anybody I know. Okay. But we have to be realistic. I also love money, and it's okay. I want to help people. And if there's a way for me to start creating a profit off of that, that is okay. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that line. It's like, just because you love people doesn't mean that it's bad for you to love money. You can have both. Right. You can definitely have both. Summer.
It's so good. Yes, exactly. I'm Izabela and I love money. I want to say a couple things about that because it's so powerful. First, I want to just say that it is this idea that we have to befriend money, right? We have to befriend money, because if you think about how most of us are talking about money or thinking about money, there's not enough. It's evil, the root of all evil, or all sorts of everything in between, right? There's this full spectrum of negative sort of talk about money, right? But here's the thing, right? Imagine that money is like a friend, or money is like a human being. If you speak like that, you wouldn't speak like that to a friend, right? And expect that friend to stick around unless that friend had some serious psychoses, right? So you would not expect that. And yet somehow we want money, but we won't admit that. So I think the fact that you not only admitted that you want money, but that you love money, that's huge. But here's the thing as well, is when you think about wanting money, what's behind that? Because we want money to feel certain things. Like, I know you and I, we have a huge value that we share in common is freedom. So we're all about our freedom, just don't come anywhere near that value, right? And Money gives us a lot of freedom. It gives us a lot of freedom to do what we want when we want. Money gives us the ability to help people, to take better care of people, to live comfortably, to give comfortably, to all of these things, right? So here's the thing. If you're uncomfortable with saying you love money at this point, that's okay. But just admitting, like you said, we're here because we do want more of this. But why do we want more of it? It's not just to have extra dollars in the bank. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't take that with you. But it is the things that can be created through that. And I think that's really important for people to connect with that and start to understand that there's so much potential in earning more or having more or creating more, however you want to look at it. And I think that's what you nailed there. And it is very uncomfortable for people, but I really hope we can get to the place where we can say, I love money the same way. I'm in Italy that we say, I love pizza, adoro la pizza. Okay. I love pizza. I'm not ashamed to say I love pizza. I mean, gosh. But we need to get to that place because for money to flow to us, we need to be in a loving relationship with it. And again, because we realize that it brings so much abundance in every area of our life to have more of it.
I love that you said, speaking about it like a good friend, like you wouldn't talk bad about or yourself at that point. Actually, we speak bad about ourselves more than we would speak about friends, which is another subject for another time. But I love that you associated it with that because it's so true. It's, we have to embrace it as part of our life. We all have businesses, especially those who are watching. They're all entrepreneurs. And, in the end, we all want that. Like, why hide? It's totally okay. We can't all be Mother Teresa, and maybe some of us can be later on, but you cannot be that unless you accumulated like a lot of wealth to give away. At least that's how I see it. I want to be able to have enough, to have so much that I can freely give it away. Mm-hmm. And I know I can get to that point because I have made up with money. We are no longer, on the opposite battlefields. We are working together. We're doing this together for the greater good, for whatever I'm reaching. Anytime, I'm able to, if I'm out, if I'm, at a grocery stores and there's a older couple in front of me, I'd love to pay for their groceries. And, every time I do that, they're just so shook. They're like, what do you mean? It's okay. We have money. I'm like, no. I want to do this. And every time I do this, I have a soft spot for old people, but every time I do this, you should see like the happiness on their face. And I'm almost like, I do it for them, but it makes me feel so happy too, that I am able to do that. And, if I didn't make money, if I didn't have a good relationship with money, I couldn't do that. I would probably be the one like counting my dollars, and I never want to count my dollars again. Mm-hmm. I remember what that is like, and I no longer want to do that. I want to be friends with money. I want money to have my back. And that's it's okay with that. There's absolutely no shame in that. And, in starting 2021, I want even more people to start having a relationship with money, a good relationship, because I meet a lot of people who say, and this is so interesting. Every time I have a conversation with money, about money with somebody, they'll say, and you probably hear this a lot. I just want to make enough. I don't need to make that much. I don't need to make that much money. But it's almost like I know they're lying to themselves. Who doesn't want $1 million a year? Who doesn't? Tell me one person. We all want, but it's like, it's almost like they're scared to say it. Like, oh my God, if I say it, I'm going to be jinxed. Like, you cannot talk about these things. If you do, it's not going to come to you. So I know they're like almost doing it to like, but it's the wrong way to do it. When you say it, I just want to make enough that I just want to be happy. Well, trust me, you're going to be way happier if you make $1 million a year. Trust me, I can guarantee you. Like, it doesn't work against you. The more money you have is not going to somehow turn you into like some evil person. It's still going to be you, but with more money. And if you're a good person right now, you're going to be able to help so many more people.
I love that, because that is actually the truth of money, is that the more of it you have, the more you can be. So it's not necessarily the case that everyone becomes a millionaire and they're better or they're wiser or they're happier, because having $1 million doesn't equate to happiness. And we see this in, for instance, people who have great fortunes and they lose a part of it and they kill themselves. Why? It's not about the money. They still have plenty left over in the bank. What happened? And that's why what I'm saying about connecting with why it's important to you is so critical. Because if you can understand that, having more money, there was a comment from Tiffany, I love this. She wrote, the more money you have, the more people you can help, in the chat here. And I love that, because that's the truth for Tiffany. That's the truth for Tiffany. That's the truth for you. And that's beautiful. So you see here, we have this possibility to express ourselves more through this means that we call money. But of course, there are many means and there are many ways to achieve that. And I think the more you tap into what is true for you, what really drives you, and then allow money to be a conduit for that. Allow it to be one of the many conduits for that, to bring more of you into the world. And if you're the type of person who is paying for the elderly people's or anybody's groceries, I mean, that's gorgeous. I know my sister-in-law, I actually call her my sister. It's strange to say my sister-in-law, but Dana McDermott, she's phenomenal. I mean, she's one of the people that I always look to in terms of abundance and the abundance creation, because she's one of those people who, just like you, she'd be like, let me get their groceries and their groceries. And what does this person need and that person need? And it's just so beautiful, because more money brings more of that out in her, and that giving and all of that. And it's such a gorgeous thing to witness. And I think that's the thing. If you can tap into that, and then you can remember that money is just a means to be more of that, then wow, that's powerful.
Yeah. And, I never told anybody that I do this. It's not something like, I just want to sound braggy or anything like this. I don't know why it even came up, but, I do it because I know what it can do for somebody else. Like for me, like $50, $100, I mean, it's nothing. Like money is just energy. Like I don't see $100 like, oh my God, like I used to when I didn't have any. So now the way I see it is like, the more I give, the more I get. And that's with anything, when you are giving, friendship or love to somebody or really anything, the more you get back. And it's like an exchange of energy. If you're holding on to your money or you're holding on to your love and you're not spreading enough around, then your subconscious is going to think there's not enough. There's really not enough. So if I make money, but I hold it so tightly, and I will always have this fear around money, then money's not going to be easily coming to me. It's going to have a block. So it's like, it's almost like though everything I do, it also makes me very happy, makes other people happy, but it's also this transaction. I don't want this transaction to ever stop. I want to be able to give a lot, because the more I give, the more I get back. So it's like selfishly doing it for me too, but it all works together beautifully. Like I don't blame myself like, oh my God, you just want money, that's why you give money away. It's, I worked it out to a point where it's like, I'm okay with that. And if I ever have these arousing thoughts, then that's okay too, because I'm only human. I cannot be perfect, and I can try many lifetimes to get to perfection, and I don't know if I'll ever be, but we're not here to be perfect. We're here to enjoy this life, and hopefully when you're old and you're on your deathbed, you feel accomplished. And I want to be able to help as many people throughout my life to have some sense of happiness. And if paying for somebody's groceries at the store and it makes their day or month, that makes me so happy. And for them, it may be like the biggest thing. And for me, it's like the smallest thing. But again, you cannot do that if you don't have enough for yourself. And that is when creating this relationship with money comes in handy. And you can do that, like you mentioned, with anything. It's not just about money, it's, practicing your relationship with your family, with your parents, with your siblings, with your best friends, with your loved ones. It's all about what you what your thoughts are about that subject. And money it's an important piece in our life, and we can't just disregard it. We can't just say, oh, I'm not going to think about it, and somehow I'm going to start being rich and wealthy and all this. Like, if you are not comfortable with money, I'm sorry to say, but you're never going to be rich. You're never going to feel like you have enough. And it all starts with that. It's just as simple as that. And a lot of people like to to make it more complicated than it is. If you start on that path where it's like, okay, you know what, I'm going to start having a relationship with money, and I'm going to invite money to be part of my life. And it's going to be awkward, but you're going to get to a point where it's just going to be part of life. So money. Money's not bad, you guys. And money's pretty good. Money helps you. It helps you help your family, helps you, get an education if you want, switch your education if you want. You're able to really do anything you want. And it's time that we start to appreciate it for what it is. It's just like you said, it's a currency. We're trading.
Yeah, I actually really love the fact that you just said, you could use it, for example, for your education. And I think that's a fantastic point, because it's not just education, but what do you want the money for? So going back to what I was saying a minute ago of like how you want to feel, that's great. And then what are the kind of strategic aims you have around money, even around giving money, for example? It's important to have some clarity about that, I think. And I'll give you an example. It's kind of funny. My daughter's been really into Monopoly lately. It's her favorite game at the moment. So we've played hours and hours of Monopoly. And it's funny, when I first started playing, because I know how long and how epic some of these games can be. So when we first started playing, I was just buying everything. And it's kind of naughty of me, but I was actually trying to go bankrupt, because I'm like, okay, I know she likes to win. My daughter really loves to win. So I was like, okay, I'll just go bankrupt as quickly as I can. And I was buying up everything. And then, of course, when it came time to pay for things, I didn't have enough left over, because, they don't give you a lot of starting money with Monopoly. And then I thought, okay, I can't let her win every single time. I've got to actually get a little strategic about this. So I started thinking, what do I want on this board? What do I want on this board? And I knew I wanted to buy the railroads. I wanted to have all 4 of the railroads, because that's really nice, because you've got a pretty good probability of, especially if you got all 4, it's $200 every time somebody lands on it. So it's great. And then utilities. I wanted to get the utilities. Again, very lucrative, especially if you have both. And I also wanted boardwalk and park place. Now, that was a little bit of the luxury side of me that was like, I want the most expensive properties on the board. I just want to have those. And there was, it filled me with a sense of like, this is, it just was excitement. It was fun, and it was exciting, and it was something that I knew what I wanted. And so I wasn't just haphazardly throwing money all over the place. And I think in our culture, our world culture really, especially in the US, it's really easy to think that the more you spend, the better off you'll be. And that's not necessarily the case. And there are actually lots of studies about this. I just finished reading a study from a professor at my alma mater at the London School of Economics, talking about how additional money doesn't actually equate necessarily to additional happiness, especially over a certain threshold. But what is interesting about money, if you have that kind of clarity of purpose and everything, is that it actually can lead to greater happiness. If you actually have a vision for that money, and by vision, I don't necessarily mean the education or the specific material outcomes that you want to create from the money that you have, but also, again, those feelings that are so important to you. What kind of values are really important to you? And if you have that, it's actually kind of incredible the way it continues to kind of circle back. And I think that also goes back to the point I was making about confidence and kind of trusting in yourself. Because if you feel like, instead of just throwing it all out the window, as I was saying, which is kind of easy to do, because especially as I was saying in the States, I remember 20 years ago, there was a statistic that the average person was exposed to something like 3,000 advertisements a day 20 years ago. And you can only imagine with our phones now how many that might be. And all of these advertisements are basically saying, you're not enough. But if you get this thing, you can be enough. And so a huge part of the training that I do when I work with people is like, shut out all that noise, even if it's just for a half hour a day or even 10 minutes a day at the start of your day or whatever it is, and just hone in on what is really important to me. And then again, as you said, making money your best friend, even your lover. Like, okay, I'm not talking about indecent proposal or like laying in bed with a lot of cash, although whatever, if that's what you want to do, that's cool too. But what I am talking about is like,
it may be in my future.
I'm not,
Not ruled it
no,
out.
zero judgment about that. It's actually pretty cool. That's a great scene. It's like one of the best scenes ever. But the idea is like, when I say make it your lover, make it your best friend, it's really like get into the energy, like you said, of what does this feel like? So what does it feel like when you're getting the education that you want? What does it feel like to be able to gift yourself any experience you want? What does that experience feel like? What does it feel like to be able to jump out of a plane because you want to just expand your idea of what you think is possible? What does that feel like? What does that kind of expansion feel like in your bones, in your cells? What does it feel like? And the more you actually are able to connect with the energy of that, the more this thing that I'm showing with my hand that I don't really necessarily know how to say, but like the more this attraction mechanism kicks in where it's like, oh, it just wants to come back because it is that way. And the last point I want to make about it being kind of like a lover is one of the things I often say is like, that flirtatious energy is really nice but like knowing you already kind of have it or knowing that you already have it, right? Because nobody wants the clingy person who's like, oh my God, I have to have this. And without it, I'm never, ever going to be happy, or I have to have you or whatever it is. What I think most of us feel good in is the energy of like feeling that sense of wholeness on your own. And then with someone else, it's greater. And it's the same thing with money, is when you feel that sense of wholeness, you feel that sense of exhilaration, excitement, vibrancy, joy for life, for what you want to create. Money likes to just come on and, and hang around that, because that's just a really exciting energy to be around. So again, it's really that first level of creation, like you said earlier, happens by creating the space, and creating the space can happen in this really fun, exciting way.
Oh, so beautifully said. And I think it will resonate with a lot of people because, again, we're putting money in a different compartment than our happiness. Mm-hmm. And when we put those two together, you can create so much more. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm happy, but I don't need money to be happy. When you say that, you're automatically kicking it out like a bad person. Mm-hmm. I don't need money to be happy. Like, where is that even coming from? Like, right. What made you even come out to that conclusion that money's not even allowed to be at your party? Like, why? Why would you kick that person out? First of all, let's start with that. It's okay. Like, invite them in. It's totally okay. It's not going to ruin anything. It's not going to make a mess. You may sit silent there for a minute, but the more you interact with it, you can see that it's actually a good friend. Yeah. You'll have many happy memories together. Like, it's okay. So, I love that you put it that way, kind of like a person, because, the more real we make it seem, the better. I think it will be easier for people to connect with that if we give it maybe a name or a personality or something, because it's easier for us to connect with people. It's easier, but with something like money, it may be harder in the beginning, but just consider it somebody that's there to help you in your life, to do well for you. I'm glad you brought up the example with your daughter. And actually, I would love to ask, like, for those listening, for those who are parents, like, what are some good ways to like start introducing money to the kids? Like, what's a good way to do that to not mess them up?
I so wish I were the expert on this. I feel like I'm constantly trying to figure this out with my own daughter. And the only answer that I have for that is heal your own relationship with money first. Like, don't worry so much about what you need to teach your child when maybe you haven't learned the lesson yourself. So like, I know that I was holding back in so many ways before, and my daughter was getting that message, because really the only way we teach is by example, especially our children, So for me, with my daughter, it's like, I know that if I can keep evolving and I can keep moving towards something, then there's the probability that she's going to take that message or take that example and be able to do what she's able to do with it. But if I instead, because I think what happens so many times is there's a disconnect between how we're living our lives and the things we're trying to teach our kids, right? And our children get that immediately, right? They see that immediately, they sense that immediately. So the more we can actually align ourselves with this juicy, yummy flow of money, the more our children will naturally do that. And again, I think it's a work in progress. And if you haven't been used to that, that's okay. Like if you're just starting to warm up to money, that's perfectly okay. And you don't have to just from one day to the next. Like I think it's a lot like when you have to turn a ship around, right? If you have a big ship, just think of your money consciousness like this huge, massive ship. So the way that it works, you can't just turn the wheel and the ship just heads in the other direction, right? Like pronto. It doesn't work that way because this is a big ship. Now, I want you to think about also all of the beliefs that were fed into you before you were even in an age to be able to rationalize away any of them or to shift any of those beliefs, right? So we were told no about our desires, what we want, so many times. And there's actually studies about this. I wanted to gather this for our call today. Maybe for a subsequent call, I'll get it, or we can put it in the show notes at some point. But like, we're told no so many times, it's ridiculous before we're even like 3 or 4 or 5, right? So everything that we think that we desire, we're told, that's bad, you shouldn't want that, whatever else. And it's the same thing with money, right? So to turn that money ship around is not like in an instant, you become best friends or lovers with your money, right? But you have to slowly sort of ease into it and slowly let it warm back up to you too. Because again, if you think of it like a friend or a lover, if you've been that person who's saying you're not invited to this party, that person's going to be a little bit like this when they come back. Okay, it's a little bit like anything that's been mistreated is, they're going to come back a little bit shy and like, is it really safe to be here? So just slowly starting to warm up and slowly starting to shift the conversation, the inner dialogue that you're having with your abundance. And then I do think, as I said, that is the ultimate teaching for our kids, is when you actually you're able to turn it around and that ship will go in the opposite direction. It just does take a little bit of finessing.
Oh, I love that. And now I'm just starting to feel bad all the times I said no to my kid. You can't do this, you can't do that. And it's so true. It's so true that, what we hear when we're young, like stays with us. It really shapes us into to our reality. So it's just like, when somebody's trying to lose weight and they tell their daughter like, hey, you're fine, you're not fat, but then they turn around and they say, oh my God, I'm so fat,
right?
So it's like the daughter hears that a lot, so she may have the same issues growing up, because even though you're trying to shelter, say no, you're fine, but I'm fat, it's like you can't do both at the same time. Like you have to lead by example. So maybe instead of saying I'm fat all the time, maybe start taking some actions where you start feeling better by yourself, and then you don't say those things. Maybe say I'm starting to eat healthier, or I am exercising more. It's like turn the narrative around. Like even though you may feel like that for a while, but eventually what you tell yourself, it will become you, whether you lose weight or not. Just you thinking differently about who you are will have such an impact on your kids. So, and I think you're absolutely right. When it comes to money, it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't want my kid to ever hear me say that I lack money.
Right.
Or anything for that matter. And in fact, I'm going to try to be even more careful on what I say no to and how I can say it differently. Because if your kid wants to go and like jump from the second floor, I'm going to want to say no, but maybe there's different ways to say no without saying no. So maybe that's another thing. So even if you don't have money right now, maybe instead of saying to your kid, like, we don't have money, like money doesn't grow on trees. Like, no, like we are working on, on bringing that money in for your, whatever you need it for, or, come up with ways that you can talk about money without putting that fear and stigma around it. Like, that's probably the best way that I can think of right now.
Yeah, I really love that. And I think that, and I actually really love this comment too that we got from someone who's tuned in. Nir, I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. When you said about the kids, they just see us, they really see us and learn. And I think that piece is like, whether we're communicating it straight outward or whether we are just in our behaviors and our actions. And I think the really important thing, though, what I really want to emphasize is, don't beat yourself up if you've been doing this, because really, truly, it's not an easy thing to turn that ship around. And it's not an easy thing to start to gain a little bit more control or direction around what you're thinking. And I think actually the easiest thing for us to do, at least this is what has been my experience, is to tune into what feels good and what doesn't feel good around money or whatever else the situation is. And as much as you're able to tune into that energy of like, feel good, it feels good to think about your freedom and the freedom that money can provide. It feels good to think about being able to offer something to someone at a grocery store or wherever else you are. It feels good, right? And the more you're able to tune into that frequency, whether or not you're even actually doing it is actually not that important, because our brains and our bodies don't really know the difference. But the more you do that, you start to rewire, you start to create a new kind of circuitry. And again, just don't, beat yourself up if you have been saying, I definitely have given a lot of mixed messages around money with my daughter, and it's a work in progress, but I know, at least I'm aware that the work that needs to be done is the work with me. And I can be really compassionate with myself, because I grew up in a situation where I felt like I didn't have that, or I couldn't have that, or I wasn't worthy, or whatever it was. And so rewiring that takes a little bit. And so in the meantime, just being really soft with yourself and taking it step by step, like you said earlier.
Yeah. And one thing that sometimes you say to me, which is so funny, I think it's appropriate for this time: don't throw the baby with the bathwater, right?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned like, which means like, just because you've been negative about money around your kids, like, don't just say, okay, this kid is done for and I'll do better with my next one. Right? Like,
so tempting.
so it's okay. You can always start new. Look, it took me 20 some years to come to US to even learn the concept of money. So not all is lost. Not all is lost. If you haven't been practicing this with your kids, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the world and you'll start over with, your next ones. No, you can still correct this, and you are able, and it's just life. You can't be perfect from day one till the end. Like, and if you were, it would be boring, to be honest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would be boring. Like, what would there be left to learn in this world if not things like this? So it's okay, as long as you learn it and you correct it, and you will only bring more joy and more love into your life. And when it comes to money, it's easily created. It's energy. And the more you create that, beautiful energy around it, the more you'll have it. And, every time you give somebody money, whether it's, paying for somebody's grocery or, gifting at Christmas, you are also reinforcing that message into your head that you have so much that you're giving it away. You have so much that you can pay for whoever you want's groceries. You have so much and when you have so much, you change as a person. Your confidence just shines through. And one example, and that it may may or may not be appropriate at this time, but I'm going to say it anyway. Like, if you're a female and you walk into a bar and you're never going to have to wait for anybody to offer you a drink, you can buy the whole freaking bar. Like, when I walk into a place, I don't need anything. I can get anything I want. And whether it's a bar, a restaurant, a department store, whatever I want. And, having that, knowing that, it makes you walk differently. You present yourself differently in a meeting. People treat you differently. When people approach me for my business, they talk to me differently because of the confidence I have, and they don't even know why. Like, they'll come to me with one thing, and then next thing you know, they're talking about something else, and they don't even know what happened. It's because you are so powerful, and you can be so influencing, and you can be everything you want once you believe that you can be. And that comes with money, that comes with power, with really anything in your life. If you know you have it, you don't even have to say you have it. People can sense it. But that's the thing. You cannot trick other people. If you feel shitty inside, people are going to see that. They're just going to see it's what we are. We're all connected. All humans are connected. You can try to hide it all you want, but until you made peace with yourself around a certain subject, you're not going to be able to be purely yourself. That's why you see a lot of people that are shy, or they feel like, oh, I don't know enough. I can't be at this table. I can't be at this conversation. Because we have the fears. Nobody has looked at us in the audience and say, you're not good enough. No, we tell that to ourselves. When we tell that to ourselves, we get smaller. And when we're smaller, people see that we're smaller. Mm-hmm. So be bigger, stand taller, be more confident, and accept money and accept everything that comes your way. Because this life is, very short. Might as well make the most of it and enjoy it fully. And it's possible. It's possible.
And I really want to say, for anyone listening, I know you for sure, Izabela. I know I for sure have been in situations in our lives and times in our lives where we didn't feel that confident and where we were making ourselves really small. So if you're listening and you're wondering, okay, well, how do I stop that? How do I actually get out of that kind of energy funk, that I'm in? And this is where I would go back to what we've been saying about just, it's one message at a time, and it's one feeling into at a time. So the more you can actually just keep going inward, in my book, Change Starts Within You, that preposition is really important, like within, because we keep looking outwardly saying, oh, well, if I have this, then I'll be okay. Then I'll be happy. Then everything will work out. But actually it's the opposite. And so it's kind of a funny little paradox of life. It's just that we're always looking, out there to say, does that thing make me good enough? Or will that person, title, job, whatever, finally make me feel okay? But really it's you giving that to yourself. And it is a little bit at a time, especially if you haven't been. So, and I think it's a life journey. Like you said, we're not perfect. We would be bored out of our minds if, everything was just rose e fiori, as they say in Italian, roses and flowers. I don't really know why, but they say that. But if it was all like that, then we would always feel like, we wouldn't have any real excitement to say, wow, we did it. But I know that you and I were talking from this place of, yeah, we've definitely been in situations where we felt unworthy, where we felt like we couldn't make it, where we were struggling to actually pay bills or even eat. Like, I remember at a certain point where I'm like, I don't know if I have enough, to get groceries this month. So, we've been in those places, and my huge message to anyone listening is like, trust me, if you're there, there is a way out, and you are the way out. You are that answer. And the more you actually keep coming back to yourself and keep coming back to what's really important and holding onto that, even for just a short little bit every day, even if you just start your day with this, instead of starting your day on your phone, scrolling through all the things you supposedly need in order to be enough, but rather, starting your day saying like, okay, when was a time in my life where I did feel that? And just tapping into that feeling. Just that exercise alone for a few minutes every day will start to turn that ship around. And you may not see immediate results, but don't be discouraged, because that is how it starts and that's how it ends. the battle with money or the battle with any other limiting pattern that you have in your life.
I love that. We all have that power, and it does take just a little change. Just like you said, instead of scrolling your phone, or if you still want to do that, that's fine. But remember to add this in to your routine. This will be beneficial for you. Like checking Facebook and Instagram and seeing all the things everybody else has that you don't have. It's only going to make you feel worse. And like you said, we've both been through that, and we are both speaking from that place of experience where this was real for us in our life, and that is why we're able to tell you now that you can do this. You can change yourself. You can change your life by changing your thoughts. And it's just so simple. And I feel like because it's so simple, people don't do it because they feel like, money is something that's very hard to come by. Power is very hard to come by. Anything is so hard to come by. But what if, you've done it your way for all this time. Why not do it this way? Why not give it a try? What do you have to lose? Every single day, tell yourself, I have enough. Money comes easy to me. Money is abundant. Anything and everything that's positive around money. And you can Google it and YouTube it. I'm sure there's a lot of people who already do this, and and until it's going to become practice. I don't do it every day anymore. But I do. Like I tell my son, my 4-year son, I am powerful. He says, I'm powerful. I'm wealthy. I'm strong. I'm this and this. I want him to be okay with affirmations. And he might not even know what he's saying right now. And you might not even know what you're saying right now. It doesn't matter if you're 20, 30, 40, however old you are. You might not even know what you're saying, but that's fine because you don't need to. It's like you keep telling yourself, like your subconscious, you are teaching yourself that these things are okay. And one day you won't even notice when the change happened. You will just be. You will just feel abundant. And somehow like everything is going to realign in your best interest. And again, I'm speaking from experience. You may be able to read this in books, but I can tell you this is what I did in my life. And I'm sitting here before you today telling you that it absolutely works. And if it was just me, I would say, okay, maybe it's some crazy event, right? Like I'm some kind of lucky person, but there's more people out there like me. There's you, Court. There's a lot of friends that, a lot of people that I talk to. And when we talk about subject of money or anything, business, we all have very similar thought pattern. You don't even have to be born poor to go through this. You may be born wealthy, but still not have a good relationship with money. So it doesn't mean just because you are born rich, this does not apply to you. It applies to everyone. And you can apply these concepts in any area of your life. And I can guarantee you will be successful.
Yeah, and if you've been struggling with kind of turning that unconscious part of you around and you've been using affirmations and stuff, I know Izabela and I are both going to be talking in an upcoming conference called Branded by Women, where we're going to go deep into how you start turning those unconscious, just automatic thoughts and feelings into a more consciously directed process, because it's a lot more than affirmations. But as Izabela said, it's simple. It's not always easy, but there's a recipe. I know for sure in my presentation, I'm going to be talking about a recipe, like principles that are universal, really, and then different kinds of practices you can use to help yourself turn around. So I hope you'll join us as well for Branded by Women, that conference coming up in this new year. And yeah.
We cannot wait for Branded by Women. And thank you to Danny for all of us to share our stories on that platform and be heard by hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of people. So we definitely thank you, Danny, for that. Let me just read the last messages before our time is up. Mina, this is one of my best friends, and he's the one that was at the meetup that I was telling you about, where I stood up and I said, I love money. Alex, hello, Alex. Money does not change the person you are. It just multiplies whatever it was there in yourself. 100% agree. Tiffany, you're amazing. This is the best podcast. We need more episodes like this. Absolutely. Can't see the name. More power to you. And thank you for doing this informational session. So thank you, Cortney. It has been an amazing pleasure to have you with me. And we will speak very soon.
It's always phenomenal to be with you. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. Really, really excited to see you again soon.
See you guys soon.
Ciao.